Our next speaker is Mattias Hjelmstedt from Utopia Music, one of the most celebrated entrepreneurs in his field. He's featured on Bloomberg, CNN, Guardian, Wall Street Journal, Wired, Serial Entrepreneur. Hjelmstedt has created companies since the 90s in the area of content distribution, online gaming, etc. Won numerous awards. I love the name of his company, Utopia Music Group. I want to listen to it. I want to be there. I want to live there. But now, today, he's talking about building an ecosystem to massively increase the efficiency of the music industry. If anyone can, Mattias can. Join us.
Thank you. That's a very nice introduction. So I'm here to have a chat about how to fundamentally change, expand, and enhance an industry with blockchain without destroying it. And why should I talk about it? Well, as a Swede, which I am, you're not really allowed to talk about yourself. It's not really etched into our society, but I'm actually going to do it anyways because it sets a little bit foundation for what I'm about to talk to or about. So as mentioned, I've created companies since the mid-90s. I've been part of the first and second internet wave. I was part of one of the biggest companies in Sweden back in the first wave. Created some of the biggest companies in Sweden in the second wave. Almost all the time it's been in the entertainment and technology space. So I created a company that did computer gaming, that created the first electronic sports tournament in the world with prize money. So I helped start esports in the world. We created social platforms, and we actually looked at an industry which was computer gaming, which was the first industry that was hit by piracy. So around 2000, literally the industry was being destroyed by piracy. And the games became less and less quality, and they had a massive problem. And we saw that if you could take a social side of it and create games to be social, the longevity of a game went from 3 weeks to literally years in the sales cycle. Pretty happy about that company. Still used by Star Wars games, it's still used by Battlefield, etc. Some of the biggest games in the world actually use it. So why do I mention this? Well, because my next company was basically Netflix before Netflix, and in Sweden it is as well known as Spotify. And what we did there is that we literally looked at a whole industry, looked at all the participants, all the costs of that industry, and we saw how do we bring technology into that to actually make a change on how that music or how that industry worked. And we actually signed some of the first deals in the world with all the studios about how to do that. And the company after that, which is literally a company called Madden TV, it's still one of the 3-4 largest television platforms on the planet, where we actually fundamentally changed the whole landscape of rights for the whole television market. We are even accredited to actually have changed it. So the reason why I can actually bring up a telephone and go back in time from a live television show, we created those rights. And it's still actually the only company globally that has all the rights for doing distribution of television worldwide. Google don't have it, Apple don't have it, etc. Some of the biggest streaming technologies in the world use our backend. Staged, set. So, biggest learning by working with all of these big industry partners and how to change an industry has to do with choosing your enemies. And one of the things I hear when I look a lot at the blockchain community is you only hear disruption, 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 and disruption. We're going to use a technology to fundamentally change the world. But who are your enemies? Who are you changing? And the interesting thing with blockchain really is it's a transformational technology. It is an infrastructure component that's been missing. Yesterday we heard the 3.0, Web 3.0, the data bank. So do you really need to destroy things for it to happen? And one of the things we've learned by, for instance, the last industry we hit is a $2 trillion industry, and we're actually able to change it. And every time we talked to someone, everybody was saying, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't. But we did. And we did because we actually were inclusive. And I'm actually going to use the music industry as an example because it's a perfect example of both blockchain and an industry which is very broken, but it has some fundamentals that actually can be fixed. So if you look at here, you have basically the industry mapped out. You have creation of music, which is songwriters, artists, etc., anyone creating music. You have something called publishing, is where you go and you put your music out so it can be spread. You have the recording of music. You have the distribution of music, which is what most people think about when they think about music industry. You think I can launch up Spotify, Apple Music, and I listen to music. You have collection, which is literally the biggest part of the music industry. Literally, when anyone listens to music in the world, in a public space, it should be collected back to the industry. So if you were to do something for this space, who is the enemy? Who do you displace? Who do you disrupt? And we've heard a lot of people talking about music, blockchain, etc. Almost all of them go at it that, yes, we're going to liberate the creation, the songwriters. It's a free willy project. We're going to make the artists free from the slavery of the system. The problem is that that goes against how this system works. If you actually did that, you would destroy the business for them. So you have to look at the ecosystem you're in. You can't just say, oh, we're going to displace the whole ecosystem. And I'm actually going to continue actually talking about this industry a little while. Because another important thing is that if you're going to change something, you have to know it. And this is one of the things that we've seen in all of the companies we created, is that we saw to it that we became the thought leader of the industry. We actually saw to it that we had more information about the industry than anyone we met. And this is something you should do. You should be the absolute expert in the industry you're in and knowing all the parts of that industry. We even in the music industry, we went back to the 17th century and we saw how the industry was created. What are the fundaments of the industry? How did it came to be as it is? And I'm actually going to give this a couple of minutes because literally the music industry started with someone playing music, created music, had a friend who actually knew someone so you could go out and play that music. You could be on stage and people listened to it. This is basically the birth of the music industry when revenue started coming in. What most people also don't know is that around 1800, something called rights of privacy started to happen, which meant that for the first time literally in the history, except for Switzerland, which did it very different, you could actually own your private domain. So you could actually start buying instruments at home, you could have your piano, people gather up in the homes, and they were actually playing music together. But to do that, you had to have music. So where do the music come from? Where do you get the notes? It comes back to this guy creating music. He had a sheet book with his music. And someone came up with the great idea, let's publish that, let's copy that. So let's take these sheets of music, let's copy them and sell it to people. And this is literally the whole birth of the industry, how it works right now, and literally the same part that is the same for almost any industry that has to do with copyrights. Around mid-century, something happened. It expanded, it became bigger. A second publisher took the sheet book the first publisher was selling that he had paid for and just copied it and sold it to people. The first one went, no, not a good idea. It's my money, I paid for that. So they started lobbying and lobbying and lobbying. Around 1890, you had a massive change in the world, which is real copyright law basically expanded to almost any territory on the world, which basically meant that one publisher can't copy another publisher's sheets. So copyright actually means the right to copy. So that's actually the birth of it. And then everything else came with technology shifts, right? You had record labels, which is a totally different right, which most people don't know. It's different, the composition, the creation of music is different from the recording of music. And the rights are different. But that happened, and you had an expansion. What also happened is that we got events, larger audiences, we got radio, we got television, so we got an enormous use of music in the world. And who collects and see to it that money flows back into the system? Collection societies or PROs was created. These are the same collection societies that work with television, they work with books, they work with anything. If you're in copyright, you have to work with the collection societies. And if you play music, you have to pay for it. And most people don't because they have no idea that they should report it. but that's their law in basically all of the world, that they have the right to collect on music. And then it was status quo for a while, and then came the digital revolutions. You had Napster, etc. The music industry broke apart. In came Spotify, music, Apple Music, etc., and started to change the way we listen to music. However, the rest of the industry did not change. So literally, we're pouring an enormous amount of data of listening to music into a system that was created 200 years ago. So it's a trickle-down system. Someone created music. They sell that music to the publisher. The publisher actually contacts the record label, or you do it directly, you sell it to the record label. You have the collection society, you have everybody. So it's like basically you layer everything on top of the copyright, and it trickles down to the one who created it. Usually about 7% of the revenue trickles down to the one who created it. Because everybody in between wants money for what they do and their costs. And as I said, it's a legacy system. So what happened when you have Spotify that literally has 40, 50 billion played songs per month? That data is sent back to an industry which is not ready for it. So 20 years ago, 60, 70% of everybody worked in the music industry was there to create music or publish or enhance music or distribute music. Today, 70% is accounting or legal. So it's been an industry that has to do with sitting there and looking at what happened, who owns, what should we do with it. So literally it takes up to five years for a songwriter to get part of their payment, because he might even have friends who created with it who he should pay in the second step. So literally it's a problem that won't go away at all until you fix it. So broken. So how does it work? It is a very outdated system, and this is where you should go in and think about blockchain in general. What things are outdated? What things are not working in the industry? Why aren't they working? And in the music industry, literally, it's about 45 billion of revenue yearly in the music industry, which has to do with selling of music, listening to music, live performance, merchandise, all of these different things together. You have high costs, and you have massive inefficiencies in the industry. So you have lack of efficiency. You have long payment cycles if you ever get paid. You have lack of transparency. You have high dependence on specific players which are siloed. You have something called black box, which is basically money coming in from usage of music, but they didn't report who owned it, which means that no one gets paid. It gets stuck in the system. You have something called value gap, which I'll talk about later. You have massive amount of unreported use of music. Literally, it's the only industry I know which is probably bigger than when it comes to uncollected use of music than what actually flows into the industry. We see figures around 30 to 60 billion that currently is used of music that is not back into the system. So, another big point when looking at industries in general and how to work with them is analyze the industry's biggest pain. The answer is not always your biggest pain with the industry and what you're trying to fix, which is usually one thing I see because I have a lot of entrepreneurs in Sweden and others that always send things to me. They always have their own problem with an industry, and they think that's the problem of everybody. Not always the case, because most people that would look at the industry of music would say the biggest problem is that the end consumers can't listen to everything they want however they want. But that's actually not the biggest pain point of the industry. The biggest pain point of the industry in the music industry is called value gap, which literally is if you're listening at Spotify or Apple Music, you get $20 per user back into the industry. So if you have a look here, you see the number of users that actually have a digital service provider and the revenue they bring back to the industry. And then you have a look at Facebook, YouTube, everybody else where you actually consume more music. And you will see that the numbers of users is way, way higher. It's more than 1 billion users listening to music in those platforms. But the revenue coming in is much less. So that's called the value gap. So it's literally use of music where you actually hide behind regulation that says it's not our problem. You tell us if it's a problem and it's the end consumer's problem that upload it, we'll just remove it. This is actually changing. There's a lot of law going on that will actually change it, but you still have to track it for it to happen. So what do we do, and why are we inclusive, and why should you be inclusive? As I said in the beginning, blockchain is a transformational technology. And I hear a lot of discussions saying, well, we just launched this blockchain platform, it's going to change the world. And being in the technology space since the birth of internet, basically, if there's one thing you've learned when it comes to technology, it's one thing. Technology is great, but if you don't apply it, nothing happens. Nothing happens. You can't just say, I have the best idea in the world, I have the best technology in the world, and you have no application for it, you don't get people in, nothing happens. So if you piss off everybody in the value chain, they will never help you achieve things. I think this is a very important thing for you to say. I'll take an example, since I have a little bit more time. We have a good friend of ours who used to be in the Global Innovation Board of Warner Music, which literally every music project you ever think about or thought about, they will end up there at some point, because it's the second largest owner of music in the world and the second largest distributor of copyrights. About, let's say, 1,000 companies has come in there and presented that they want to help change the music industry. Would anyone take a guess how many of those said they're going to do it with Warner Music, and how many came in there and said they're going to disrupt them? Anyone? I can tell you, out of 1,000 companies that have come in there, 3 said they want to enhance the business of Warner Music, and the rest said they're going to come there and disrupt them. Do you think Warner Music will give them the music? No, they won't. They will not. So everybody says, no, it's so hard to work with these media organizations because they're just blocking and hindering everything. No, they don't. You don't go there and you try to enhance their business. You go there and try to steal their lunch. Of course they're going to fight against you. It goes without saying. So when you go there and say, no, we're going to enhance you, we're going to help you, actually, your biggest problem is you have massive loads of accounting and data problems. You don't own the data around your music consumption anymore. So the definition of a major, you talk about majors when it comes to studios. The major actually owns production until distribution. That's why they're called a major. Today, no major actually controls distribution anymore. Distribution is controlled by someone else. So they lost control of distribution, they lost control over data. And they have a lot of legacy and costs. So if you talk to them and say, well, we actually have a system that will actually help you. We actually cryptographically is going to assign all the usage of music into the chain so you can control it in your own copyrights. You will have the usage of music and the data of music controlled by you. And you will have an audit trail. So you can actually see and verify that that was used. The auditing in the music industry is currently at 2012. That's what they're auditing right now. So it's absolutely crazy. But this way, a node is sent of usage, which is cryptographically written into the chain. All the people who owns it actually can get paid immediately because you don't need accounting anymore. Great. Blockchain works. And it doesn't disrupt anything. It actually removes 70% of the personnel costs from a record label or a publisher or all the people in between. So you actually remove an enormous amount of cost and increase all the efficiencies. There's no enemies, there's just beneficiaries. On the other side, when it comes to the 45 billion, you have to find data. Again, the data bank we talked about yesterday. It's true, that's what it is about. So what we created at Utopia is a massive data platform. We have billions and billions of data points already from the music industry. And we're building a system which is inclusive. So anyone that can create technology around tracking of music can actually put it into the platform in a blockchain world with a custodian. And if that is used for collection, you actually earn money. Which literally is, we're building a system which lets the whole world help the music industry get more money in. So you can actually solve this problem. And once you have all the data points, the copyrights, and the usage of them, the system will expand. Do anyone know Spotify's biggest problem? Spotify's biggest problem, or Apple Music's biggest problem, it has to do with licensing. They just got sued for $1.6 billion for licensing music the wrong way. So what happens is that people stay out of the music industry because of the problem. But once you have the access and the data and the usage in there, you'll have a massive expansion. Anyone can create a new Spotify, can create metal Spotify, can create whatever you want, because the system is there for you. Inclusive again. It actually expands the revenues for the industry. And that's what we do. I don't need to bore you with this one, because this one is more important. If you actually do that, and this is the whole industry, bear with me, the industry's the cost has gone up, the revenue has actually gone up, but by inclusion of blockchain, you will actually remove a lot of the cost from an industry. Who says no to that? No one does. Everybody is inclusive in this, because you lead with data. Data bank is a good word, because that's Web 3.0. If you fix that, everybody earns more money, and the revenue increases, and you can double the revenue of the music industry by just controlling the data. And it has to be blockchain, so the audit trail is there, the payment trail is there, and the control of the usage is there. One last point before we go to questions. This is also one thing that coming out from outside in the beginning of the blockchain industry and then looking at it, the use of the token is very, very interesting, because almost all projects I see, they're non-inclusive. They do an ICO to sell the tokens to people who are already on crypto. Are they your users? Are they the ones that are going to enhance the system? Are they the ones that's going to, make this happen? I would urge anyone that thinks about it to actually reserve a big chunk of the tokens for the industry you're actually in. For instance, what we're doing is that when we're going to do this in the future, 39% of all the tokens in this is actually going to be given away to the music industry. If you're an artist, you get it. If you're a music industry label, you get. So the actual ownership of the tokens and the revenues in the system will actually benefit all the people in the ecosystem. So you actually give them a platform for efficiency, you increase their revenue, you give them back control, but you also give them the incentive to be there. You actually pay them to be there. Blockchain allows all of these different things. Be inclusive. Think about all the benefits. Don't try to hoard it into yourself. Build ecosystems. Disrupt industries by helping them. Because what's going to happen in the end is that's going to make that industry different. That's going to fix all the fundamentals in the industry. That's what we do, to create a fair world of music. This is the main reason why I want to do it. Because it's not fair. Thank you.